Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to another episode of Muslims Uncensored with me, Robert Carter, and the grey fox, Roshan Saleh. Now, we've got so much to discuss, but we'll have to do it as quick fire as possible because once this show ends, we'll be heading back up to Rochdale to carry the final day of the by-election, the vote day, as we wait to see who will win in that key election vote, which could be the first opportunity for local Muslims to throw a real spanner in the works and to get a very vocal pro-Palestine candidate, i.e. George Galloway, into the seat. So Roshan, let me just come to you first of all, because obviously we'll be discussing the topics today. Rochdale's coming up, but you wanted to react to some comments which came in from last week's show. Let's get that out of the way first of all.
A couple of things. I mean, first of all, we've got a new set, so it's a bit of a different feel to the show.
Yeah, we're evolving.
Yeah, the reason why we did that is because this is kind of basically a more relaxed show where, mates, I mean, I won't call us mates, but acquaintances shoot the breeze a bit.
Barely colleagues.
Yeah, kind of. So, yeah, we just felt we'd get rid of the desk. We felt that we'd have a more relaxed kind of look and feel to the show. So if you like that, brothers and sisters, tell us, leave it in the comments. If you don't, say that so we can ignore it, but
we're still going to make some changes, do up the place. I think
bit of shisha or a bit of
something like that. Yeah, but I think
my idea was to have cushions and like a Moroccan feel, but maybe that's going too far.
I like it, but we've got to invest in something. I think we're two guys who have no idea how to design anything. We'll have to get the wives involved or something like that. Get a bit of advice.
Someone with an eye for exactly.
Yeah, exactly. We're just two guys.
So,
like you said, we'll end up with just a weird thing with there'll be like a cigar box in the background, shisha pipes, and just weird man stuff. I don't know, like a Formula One.
I think it looks quite good though. I personally think even this setup looks quite good. But anyway,
yeah,
let's see. Inshallah,
it'll turn into like one of those male dens, football dens or something. But anyway.
Some of the comments. I mean, we read the comments, by the way, every week, and we go through them and like them, and even the ones we don't like, we still read them. There were a few comments. I mean, a minority of comments. And it's been quite persistent over the past 6 or 7 weeks. People think we're not serious enough and we should be more serious and we should do the news more seriously because news is serious.
No one takes it seriously.
And we're making a mockery of the news and we're kind of trivializing things and we're too jokey and too much banter. What do you reckon? Should we be like robots and what do you reckon?
Well, I mean, is this widespread criticism of the show, or is this like
one or two killjoys, basically?
Roshan, you've got very thin skin, I think. One or two bad comments that you would have ditched the whole project, or you would have attacked the audience. I mean,
one or two killjoys with clearly no sense of humour and no charisma. Don't like the fact we're too kind of jokey about things.
Well, what I've noticed is that we do actually have a nice, healthy right-wing audience because they always comment. They're the main ones who comment on our shows.
The far right.
Exactly.
They're not, but there's a minority of kind of far right. I won't call them fans, but yeah.
Well, they support us by putting the comments in, even though they're hateful comments.
I think what we're trying to do. I think there isn't another show on the market like this where Muslims shoot the breeze in a relaxed way and try to make news accessible. We are serious, we do make serious points, but we're just chatting like friends, basically. Obviously we're not friends, but we're chatting like we're in the car, because Robert and I often do lots of car rides around the country.
Alone.
And this
on the road.
This is how we chat, without the swearing, of course. No, we don't swear. But this is how we talk when we're in the car, so we thought we'd recreate that in a studio.
Yeah, I think, let me just say, I appreciate the fact that, you guys have been supporting us. Most of the comments and feedback you've been giving us is helpful, constructive as well. So we do appreciate that. Keep it coming in, because we do read them, as you can see. Roshan is a very sensitive flower. He's thin-skinned. But do keep it in. As long as it's constructive, we'll listen to it. And the show is growing, the studio's changing. And with the Holy Month coming up round the corner, we're going to have some new changes. And I think the show's just going to get better and better with your support.
So the question is, do you want us to become like the killjoys and the charisma bypasses in some of the comments, or do you want us to become robots, or do you want us to kind of be the people that we are?
Do you want to keep Roshan on the show, or because I'm wondering if maybe he shouldn't be on here, to be honest. But leave your comments in the comment section below. Roshan, let's kick off with the first topic, because this is an important one. This is a big one. It's taking us over to Saudi Arabia now. There's been a huge uproar over footage of so-called Palestine censorship in Mecca and Medina and places like that. And one clip went absolutely viral. It was of a sister who was doing Umrah, I think. She was right by the Kaaba. She pulled out a Palestine flag, and the Saudi authorities, the custodians, they basically took her away and said, don't do that. The backlash was so viral and widespread that actually the chief imam responded to this in an Arabic news interview. I'll just play out a little clip of that now and see what he said.
الحرمين الشريفين أن يراعوا هذه الخاصية. أمن الحرمين خط أحمر لا يمكن المساس به. جعل الله الحرمين مكانا للعبادة، ليست لرفع الشعارات ولا للهتافات ولا لصرف العمل في الحرمين الشريفين في مكة والمدينة والمسجد الحرام والمسجد النبوي والمشاعر المقدسة لغير العبادة ولغير الدين. ولهذا نؤكد نحن على القاصدين أن لا تغلبهم الحماسة والعاطفة في الحرم الشريف. عليكم بالدعاء، عليكم بالتوجه إلى الله جل وعلا. أنتم أيها القاصدون أتيتم لعبادة الله، لأداء العمرة، للزيارة، للحج، فلا تنصرفوا لغير العبادة. لا ترفع شعارات في الحرمين إلا شعار التوحيد وشعار التلبية لبيك الله.
So, where do you stand on this, Roshan? Let me get your view first of all.
Well, it's a controversial topic, and I have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, same.
My initial reaction was the Saudi authorities went well over the top, and but I wanted to check it out with a scholar, basically, because it is a kind of a fiqh issue. It's this is the haram, and there are rules in the haram. It can't be a free-for-all. So I did check it out with a few scholars, and now I've come to a kind of conclusion. I think the general rule in the haram, it's probably better not to have political symbols, and because otherwise it's a free-for-all and everyone's going to start demonstrating for their particular cause. And it is the Abdurrahman Sudais, the chief imam, he called it Makana Ibadah, so a place of worship. And that is the default position. However, we are in the middle of an international emergency. An ummah-wide emergency. All our thoughts and prayers and focus is on Gaza and Palestine. And the fact is that the Saudi authorities, who literally were on the verge of normalizing with Israel, don't forget, a few months ago, they have basically muted pro-Palestine activism in the kingdom, So that is the background and the context. I personally feel that it's not a good look. And the authorities, they could have showed a lot more compassion. They could possibly have had a word in the lady's ear instead of kind of taking her away. Don't know what happened to her afterwards. Saudi Arabia as a nation could show much more solidarity with the Palestinians. They could do some kind of, formal dua for Palestine in the haram. There are ways that they can show their solidarity for Palestinians so that people don't have to kind of resort to these desperate measures. And my sympathy is, I feel that lady, her heart was in the right place, and she was showing solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Gaza, and that's what we should focus on. I don't think any of the blame should be on that lady. Perhaps, she shouldn't have done that in the vicinity of the Kaaba, but I think the Saudi authorities could have handled it a lot better at the same time.
I don't know if you remember, but there was a journalist, I think there was a delegation that went to visit Medina, and they came close to the Mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Jewish Chronicle did a little talk from there. I can't remember if it was one of their journalists that went, or it was something like that. Now, you're telling me that, okay, we shouldn't be allowing these political messages in these holy cities or these holy sites. But then why was this pro-Israel Zionist journalist, he was doing political messaging there, wasn't he? It was like, we're returning to the area and stuff like that. I remember, because obviously Jews used to live there once upon a time and now they don't. And he was pushing his political message, and I think that was very awkward.
There's two things I want to say about that. First of all, when Abdurrahman Sudais, Sheikh Sudais, gave that statement, he did it with an image of Mohammed bin Salman in the background. So for me, that's a political symbol in the haram, And the second thing is, there is a difference of opinion about the status of Medina. In Mecca, it's clear non-Muslims are not allowed. I think that's from a Quranic verse, if I'm not mistaken. In Medina, there's a difference of opinion over whether non-Muslims can visit Medina. The traditional position is that it's a no, but some say for a short period of time for business or whatever, they can visit the outskirts of Medina or the outskirts of the Haram in Medina,
Sure.
and then they move on. So
But
that's understandably
not
justified.
push those messages though. Not go there and do their little political
Absolutely.
thing, especially when it's, you know, what they're doing to the Palestinians, what they're doing to Muslims, this type of thing. I mean, we know what the Jewish.
So there's loads of hypocrisy from, you know, the Saudi authorities. The fact is that political symbols and actions do happen in the Haram, in Mecca, you know, praising the Saudi rulers and, you know, even talking about normalization. I think Sheikh Sudais did that indirectly a few months ago. So it does happen. It's not a good look at all, you know. Obviously, some people will say, no, there should be no political symbols in the Haram and take that hardline position. But I think we have to use our brains as well and look at the context here.
Absolutely. Now, there is another major story which we've got to react to straight away. It's the US Air Force Marine, Air Force soldier who set himself on fire outside Israel's embassy in the States. And he's now died from his injuries, actually. It was footage that he filmed himself. It went out and it went absolutely viral. I'm sure many of our viewers have probably seen the original footage. We shared on 5 Pillars. We obviously censored the really graphic part. But it's created headlines all across the world. Let's just quickly play out a clip, just so for anyone who hasn't seen it, I'm sure everyone has.
Is Aaron Bushnell. I am an active duty member of the United States Air Force, and I will no longer be complicit in genocide. I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers.
Can I help you, sir?
Free
Hey!
Palestine!
Hey!
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Man's on fire! Man's on fire!
So obviously that was Aaron Bushnell, 25-year-old, who has basically made this shocking protest for what's going on in Gaza. Now, the headlines are basically attacking him, I would say. A lot of articles with headlines like he used to be an anarchist, apparently. They're saying he was part of some Christian sect, suggesting he was a bit of a weirdo. There's a lot of people talking about how he apparently has mental health issues or something like that. I don't know, but what do you think, Roshan? Because I think that the way it's being reported on suggests that because he made such a bold, strong statement with what he did, rightly or wrongly, now they're thinking, how can we undermine that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can't condone, even religiously, we can't condone people that set themselves on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of like suicide. But he's a non-Muslim. He's not Muslim. So we don't judge him by the same standards as Muslims. My initial thoughts is that, you know, he's someone with a good heart and he was driven to these desperate measures because no one will listen to us. And increasingly we are being driven to desperate measures. We can see a genocide going on. No one's listening to us. Nothing's changing. You know, the massacres continue day after day. And that's why even pro-Palestinian protesters, we don't want to disrupt people's lives, you know, but what else can we do? You know, how can we be listened to? And that's why I think pro-Palestine protesters are moving into the area of civil disobedience now and to doing things which are on the verge of unlawful or downright unlawful, you know, which they wouldn't do under normal circumstances. I think if this had happened, if let's say he had been demonstrating against Russia's actions in the Ukraine, I think the Western media would be lauding him and saying what a brave martyr, be calling him a martyr. Because it's Palestine, they're calling him a crazy guy, etc., etc. So it just makes me think, you know, this is, I mean, he's a guy with a good heart. He's there with a good cause, driven for his own reasons into this absolutely, I mean, burning yourself alive, that must be the most painful way to die you can possibly think of. And this is what he's done because he's been desperate.
He said, I think in his talk, that he was racked with guilt, basically. It's like a guilt thing that he felt. And he, like you said, there's nothing else he could do about it except take this very shocking act. I don't know what to call it, solidarity or whatever. But I mean, basically, how crazy is it? Because we're told by Zionists all the time, oh, we are the greatest example of anti-colonialism in the world, and we're a force for good, we're the most moral army in the world, and so on and so forth. But I mean, the actions, what they're doing to ordinary innocent people, to children in Gaza, is so horrific, so well documented, that this guy felt like compelled to burn himself alive. I mean, what does that say about you, about what you stand for? You know, and the West won't even come to at least call for a ceasefire amid a genocide. They won't even acknowledge it's a genocide. I mean, how disgusting is the West, you know? And they're trying to outlaw people from protesting about it. That's how disgusting the stance is here. It's like, you can't even talk against Western foreign policy now. It's like, this country feels like an authoritarian police state that's defending genocide abroad, and if you talk against it, you go to jail. That's how it feels like. Police are knocking on your door.
Reminds me of
protests.
Reminds me of the Tunisian guy that sparked the Arab Spring.
Yes, of course.
Bouazizi, I think his name was, and he burned himself alive in an act of desperation. And obviously, we know that that led to other stuff happening and a wave of revolutions across the Arab world. I think the mainstream media is trying to dampen that down. They don't want this to lead to copycat situations or any kind of unrest. So they're trying to demonize him, to discredit him, call him a nutter, etc.
For sure. Now let's come back to the UK, because Rochdale, of course, is the big story, which could create some massive shockwaves.
How was your trip
UK.
there last week?
Yeah, it was really good. I did manage to find Simon Danczuk. I'll be careful what I say, because he's obviously alleging that he's having all sorts of threats, and I know what he'll say if we, you know, go in too hard. You know, he's obviously in a position now where he's taken that line, and I think there was actually an example of footage which was concerning. But I think it was just, it's such a divisive campaign that's being run in Rochdale. But we have to remember that, you know, one side is standing with Gaza amid a genocide and is talking against genocide. You know, the Galloway team, whether you like him or not, he is condemning genocide, and that he's made that focus point of his campaign. The other side is saying, oh, we don't care about that. We don't care about
Let's
Gaza.
talk about gutters in Rochdale.
Yeah, let's talk about gutters in Rochdale. And it's like, oh, okay, well, you're talking about divisive politics. As far as I know, that was the first time Simon Danczuk even bothered to show up in a Muslim majority area of Rochdale. Might be wrong, but it didn't appear that way. So, you know, you want to talk about divisive politics, Reform UK, what they've been saying about Islam, and the leader of the party, Richard Tice, I believe his name is, he said on GB News, Sharia law and anyone practicing it should be outlawed in the UK. He said there should be laws implemented to ban Sharia in the UK.
I actually think we need a law that explicitly says that no one can conduct in any walk of life in the United Kingdom Sharia law.
That's Reform UK for you.
As Muslims, we're always, I mean, all of us are practicing forms of Sharia in our daily life, whether, you know, that's the way we pray or, you know, in our personal lives, etc., etc. But I do think that some Muslims fall into this trap of trying to make, well, we don't want Sharia law. I saw a tweet the other day. It said, well, we don't want Sharia law in the UK. This is from a Muslim account. And I don't think we should fall into that trap. Ultimately, Sharia law is Allah's law. You know, it's the Quran and Sunnah. So we should all want it. Now, obviously, we're in a non-Muslim country. We're not trying to impose it on anybody. But if we can live our lives according to Sharia, as long as it doesn't contravene British law, and if we can argue for Sharia as well in a peaceful way, and if people want to adopt it, then that's fine. We're not trying to impose it on anybody. But I don't think we should fall into the trap of actually trying to undermine ultimately what is Allah's law, because I think that's anti-Islamic. It's falling into Islamophobic stereotypes as well. But I mean, Rochdale, the only thing I want to say about Rochdale, I think we've said a lot about Rochdale, is that if you're in Rochdale, brothers and sisters, and you have the right to vote, or if you know people in Rochdale with the right to vote, you need to encourage them to vote tomorrow for George Galloway. That's the best way of making a protest against the genocide enablers. We need to come out with a George Galloway win tomorrow, not because we love George Galloway necessarily, but because we want to send a message out to the Labour Party in particular and to the wider electorate that you can't take the Muslim vote for granted, that if you do support genocides against Palestinians, then we will punish you at the ballot box. So it's important that Galloway wins tomorrow and wins convincingly. I want to be coming out of there gloating tomorrow. I want to be coming out of there saying Muslims won, Labour Party nil, quite frankly. And we want to send a clear warning shot out to the Labour Party and to everyone else ahead of the election later on in this year. So if you do have any influence over people in Rochdale, get them to vote George Galloway, help them to vote if they need it, if they're old and they need a lift to the polling station, if they need a little, peaceful persuasion, then get them to the polling station and help them to vote in a peaceful way.
I like your clarification there, just in case.
Non-violent way.
Well, let's talk about this article very quickly before we move on, because Britain First. I didn't know that they were actively fundraising for their campaign in Rochdale. I didn't even realise there was a candidate for Britain First in Rochdale. Tell me about this article.
So this is Dilly's thing, really. Dilly's thing. He noticed that he's on the Britain First subscriber list. Maybe I shouldn't say that because they'll probably take him off now. But he gets Britain First emails, and he noticed that they were fundraising for Ashley Simon, their candidate for Rochdale. And they had a donation, please contribute to her campaign, and they had a link where you can receive money. So I'm assuming Britain First must have tens of thousands of subscribers at least, because they've been banned on other platforms. So I'm assuming they have a lot of subscribers, and they probably bring in a decent amount of money through their email newsletters. And then the next day, not just us, but others noticed that the deadline for applications to be a candidate from the local council had ended, and Ashley Simon's name was not on the list. Now, since then, we've heard nothing from Britain First. There's been no public announcement over whether they got any money. I'm sure they did get some money. What's happened to that money? Has it been refunded to people who gave it? Has it been used in any capacity whatsoever? So they've literally canvassed for money. They've solicited money from their own supporters, and their candidate hasn't appeared on the list, and they haven't told anybody what happened to that money. So the question is, have they ripped off their own supporters? Have they defrauded their own supporters? Now, we reached out to Britain First because maybe there's some misunderstanding, maybe that money has been given back. Dilly has asked them on Twitter, so have I. Radio silence. So what's happened to that money?
That's a very good question. I think, again, they say things like, the right wing will reach out to people in Rochdale and say, support us, we care about Rochdale, don't back all these lefties and whatever else, these Muslims and foreigners, because they only care about Gaza and, genocide, like who cares about that? But actually, I mean, from this example, they don't care about the people of Rochdale, clearly. Maybe they just care about themselves and enriching themselves.
Well, if you're a Britain First supporter, I'd be outraged. And unless you've received a refund, if you have, tell us in the comments and then we can, kind of update the story. But it's complete radio silence. We do not know what's happened to that money. So if you're a Britain First supporter, if you're
we care about Britain First
if you're
supporters,
a patriotic, if you're patriotic, flag waving, beer swilling, fat belly, Britain First supporter, that likes a punch up on a Saturday night in a town centre, a bit of Islamophobia, then you should be asking, where's my money gone?
Yeah, we're looking out for you here. Fabulous. Well, let's go to the next story, because this is something that I'm concerned about as well. The journalist at Sky News who disappeared, it seems.
Beldenati.
Yeah, she did an interview, a good interview, I thought, with an Israeli regime representative. And of course, as always, he had a go at her for being allegedly anti-Semitic and so on. And then she's just sort of disappeared. I'll play out a little snippet now of the exchange, and we'll go from there.
You've doubled down on those public comments. You've called for a voluntary migration of Palestinians from Gaza. In November, you co-authored a piece that appeared in the Wall Street Journal. You suggested the ethnic cleansing of some of Gaza's population to Western countries that would accept the refugees. The exact quote from that article, one idea is for countries around the world to accept limited numbers of Gazan families who have expressed a desire to relocate. Do you stand by those statements?
I will not allow it. Ethnic cleansing, that's a word you used. If you read my article, I spoke about voluntary immigration.
I read that article. I did read that article, and I've just quoted from it.
Let me remind you that you spoke about ethnic cleansing. I spoke about voluntary immigration. And I think anyone in the world who voluntarily wants to move to another country should be eligible to do that. But you know what? It's not the first time that we hear those allegations. I
Yeah,
think
the sort of voluntary relocation of many Jewish people during the Holocaust, I imagine. It is not voluntary relocation.
Compare that? Shame on you for that comparison.
Let us please,
That's a shameful anti-Semitic equation.
let us please go to the
I will not
subjective.
allow you to speak about the Holocaust.
You said earlier, you said.
So after that interview where she basically, it seems to me like she'd had enough and decided to really grill this guy on his views. And again, he used dodgy language in this article.
Because he's a genocide supporter.
Exactly. Yeah. And then all of a sudden there was a massive online backlash. All these pro-Israel accounts were calling for Sky News to sack her and discipline her and all sorts of stuff. And it looks like they basically did. I mean, what's the latest, Roshan?
Well, she's disappeared.
Yeah,
should we put a missing persons report out or something like that? I mean, she's not tweeted since January the 25th. Sky News, she's not been on the screens at all. So I'm assuming that she's probably been suspended or something like that. But Sky News need to,
or something.
Sky News need to kind of front up and tell us what's happening here, because I think emails need to go into Sky News asking them what's happened to Bel Donati, because I mean I'm a little bit concerned about her safety as well. I mean kind of like what's happened to her? Is she alive? Is she I mean if she was in Gaza, the Israelis probably would have killed her and killed her family and destroyed her home. But
like
I mean,
all those other journalists.
Yeah, exactly. Killed, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting. Obviously, the Israelis and the Zionists generally, they consider any comparison between what's happening now, what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, and the Holocaust, they consider that to be anti-Semitic. And it's there in the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Well, they can't make any comparison whatsoever. Now, obviously, I think some comparisons are probably inappropriate. Obviously, the scale of what happened in the Holocaust is much bigger than what's happening now. Although in such a short space of time, I mean, the Second World War lasted for 6 years, don't forget, whereas this has only been a few months. But I do agree some comparisons are probably anti-Semitic and inappropriate. But I think the reason why people make that comparison is because the Jews were persecuted by the Nazis. So why are the sons and daughters and grandchildren and granddaughters of those same Jews doing very similar things to the Palestinians? That's where, I think pro-Palestinians think the comparison is apt. So the question is, do you accept Zionists and genocide enablers who are actually committing these atrocities? Should they be policing our language and deciding what language we use? Yeah. I don't agree with that. I think some comparisons are absolutely apt and absolutely appropriate. Others aren't. And I judge it on a case-by-case basis. But the fact is that it looks like Sky News have disciplined, at least, I don't know whether they've sacked her, Bel Donati. We need some clarification. Where is she?
Absolutely. And I think it's just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, they use genocidal language all the time. We've even documented that on 5 Pillars. We did a very interesting short video, literally quoting words from politicians and their military chiefs, their celebrities, all using this disgusting, outrageous genocidal language whenever they want. And then whenever anyone says, oh, don't you think that is genocidal language? Don't you think you're engaging in a genocide here? They go, oh, that's absolutely outrageous. Anti-Semitism, how dare you? How dare you? And it's like, come on, man. Like, we need to be allowed to speak about this. Even, I mean, once upon a time, Britain used to rule the waves, that's how the chant goes. Now who rules us? Do you know what I mean? That's the question I want answered. So let's see. But
the only thing I want to add is that I saw a tweet by Daniel Hikikachu on this, and he basically said that the Israelis are literally the most brazen genociders in history, because the British and the Americans and others, they committed their crimes, but they tried to cover them up to a certain extent, or they didn't brag about them. Where the Israelis, you can see what they're doing in Gaza, literally soldiers filming themselves as, infrastructure is bombed, literally perverts as well, like going in, rifling through women's drawers and looking at their underwear and stuff like that. And they're literally proud of what they're doing, and they're putting it on social media.
It's really gross.
They're brazen, and they really think that they can get away, because they feel that they can get away with anything, not only genocide, but boasting about genocide, because they believe the Western mainstream media and Western politicians will protect them from anything. They have this sense of impunity.
Do you know what's crazy as well, very quickly? We're talking about this being the most well-documented genocide on record ever because of social media. But one of the reasons it's so well documented that no one's mentioning as well is that it's not just the Palestinians that are filming what the Israelis are doing to them, it's the Israelis are filming it themselves.
Absolutely.
And boasting about it, as you said. And another thing, on TikTok now, there's loads and loads of Israeli accounts. They're not necessarily soldiers. There are soldiers on there boasting, but they're actually Israeli citizens, civilians, that are basically on there, and they do lives and talks with even some Palestinians, and they literally go on there and they say like, yeah, like all Palestinians are devils, and we like good that they're all dying, and we don't care that kids are dying, and these are just
kill babies, all that kind of stuff.
All that stuff, and I'm actually moderating it down. If you actually watch the stuff, I'm sure many viewers have, it's disgusting. They're literally happy that babies are getting killed. Like even in a war, I wouldn't celebrate a dead baby, whoever it is. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I thought that was the normal, but there you go. There's one rule for humanity, another rule for Zionists, I guess. Well, let's go to the final story because, again, this is a little bit old, but there have been some developments. Tory MP has been suspended after talking up about a so-called Islamist threat. He also linked the London Mayor Sadiq Khan to an Islamist takeover or something like that. His name was Lee Anderson. And basically this comes after that crazy day of the key vote on the ceasefire, which went completely AWOL in Westminster. The SNP ceasefire motion, which basically didn't happen. Labour derailed it. The Speaker's now under fire, and it's evolved and evolved. So Roshan, just break it down for us about this story. What's going on?
Well, obviously there was a farce in Parliament. I think it was after the show, after last week's show, so that's why we didn't talk about it. Where there was supposed to be this ceasefire vote, but Labour put pressure on the Speaker to add their amendment, which basically saved Labour from a massive humiliation because lots of their MPs would have defected and voted on the SNP motion. So Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, he's basically an ex-Labour MP. He did his party leader basically a massive favour by sparing his blushes and allowing, people like Shabana Mahmood and whatever to vote on the Labour amendment. So it's, because otherwise they would have had to kind of either vote for the SNP amendment, which was a pro-Palestine amendment, or be accused, going back to their constituencies, of again voting against the ceasefire. It's very complicated and it's a bit boring now, but basically this has led to suddenly a story about what was a farce in Parliament and Keir Starmer, knifing the Speaker in the back and putting pressure on him. This has suddenly morphed into, no, it's the Muslims' fault. I mean, how they got there is incredible, but I'll tell you what their convoluted logic has basically led to. So this has led, this farce of democracy has led to a explosion of Islamophobia in the British media. And that's because the Speaker said, the reason why I did this, because I was scared that MPs would have to go back to their constituencies and say, oh, we voted again against a ceasefire. And they would be, he didn't say attacked by Islamists, but that was the insinuation, that they would be attacked by pro-Palestinians and perhaps even physically attacked. And now the media, all they're talking about, including Lee Anderson, is that, oh, this country is controlled by the Islamists, they control our streets, they're intimidating politicians, they're intimidating MPs, and that's why there was this chaos in Parliament last week. It's all the Muslims' fault. So that's where literally, if it rains, it's our fault, Literally, the way they've twisted the logic and made it all about Muslims just proves how Islamophobic this country is,
Yeah, it's a total disgrace. This country should be bitterly ashamed of itself. The fact is that there's a genocide going on abroad. Politicians can't get their act together. They can't even condemn it. And all they can do is just blame foreigners, basically. That's their get out of jail card.
We're not even foreigners. Most of us are not even foreigners.
Well, there you go. Yeah, exactly. They just blame Muslims. They blame immigrants whenever they feel like it. And it's just a total disgrace. The fact of the matter is that they are genocide enablers. Our entire government is elected scoundrels. They're literally elected scoundrels, and even the so-called Muslim MPs are not even doing a good job. So they are a total waste of time. I don't have any time for British politics at the moment. The only thing we need to do is just try and find ways to throw spanners in the works, upset things politically here using peaceful means. I don't want another Islamist headline doing the rounds, but it's a total disgrace. But that's why, as you tweeted, we can't focus in on their narrative. You know, the Labour Party issued some anti-Islamophobia comments and stuff like that.
Trying to deflect attention.
Deflect attention. So let's not play their stupid game. Let's focus on what we want to do, which is the Muslim vote strategy, upset the political situation here in the UK, get Rochdale a win if we can, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think the focus on Lee Anderson, there were quite a lot of headlines, but I think that's because the Labour Party have planted these headlines in an attempt to deflect attention away from themselves and their role in the parliamentary farce, and a way to attack the Tories, basically. I think we shouldn't. I mean, no one's really talking about Lee Anderson. I mean, how many people have heard of Lee Anderson since last week?
He's a loser.
Yeah, he's just some right-wing MP. I think he was Labour, and he'd probably be Reform UK by the end of the week.
Yeah.
You know, and GB News is really stirring it up. GB News and Talk TV, the usual suspects, right-wing media run by Islamophobes and or kind of owned by this Islamophobe Paul Marshall, and I think Talk TV is Murdoch, isn't it? So yeah, there's a lot going on, but I think we have to create our own agenda and not respond to theirs. Absolutely. And I think no one cares what Lee Anderson said about Sadiq Khan, because I think most Muslims don't care about Sadiq Khan, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, he's not controlled by Islamists. We all know he's probably controlled by Zionists more than Islamists, and the trans and LGBT lobby.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm not offended by what Lee Anderson said about Sadiq Khan.
And let me just be absolutely clear. If, for example, one day comes where an actual religious Muslim gets elected to Parliament, it's good.
It's not going to happen, though, is it?
Probably not, but let's have a good, more Islam for the UK. That's my position on it. They talk about Islamism this, Islamism that. Well, the way the UK is, this decadent, immoral society that supports genocide abroad, if there was a bit more Islam here, maybe we might have some moral compass.
It'll save the country.
Probably.
Yeah,
so
Islam is the only hope for this country.
More Islam for everyone, inshallah. Good. Right, well, I think we're going to have to end the show on that one, Roshan. Thank you very much, guys. There's plenty of fantastic coverage coming your way, especially with the Rochdale by-election results just around the corner. Me and Roshan will be up there next. So make sure you like, share and subscribe. It helps the channel immensely. Leave your comments in the comment section below and be kind. Roshan is thin-skinned, as you saw earlier on. But thank you very much and take care, and see you next time, inshallah. Jazakallah khair for now.